There we go. Okay, I'll start again. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us wherever in the world you are. And on that note, we actually have a bunch of people from obviously the United States and also a really big group from Canada. But we also have individuals from Macedonia, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, Great Britain, apart from just me, Canada, India, New Zealand, Bolivia, and Austria. So we have an international audience. Don't know if they're all listening in live, but I'm sure they'll be checking in at some point, maybe on the recording. So my name is Terry Chiplin. I'm the event director for the US Trail Running Conference. And we're looking forward very much to our three panelists. If we could give everybody a wave. There we go. Okay, wonderful. So I'm just going to make sure that everybody can. There we go. Okay, so hopefully we got the chat enabled now. I didn't realize on the last session that Zoom had made a change to their formatting. Yeah, hopefully if actually Anna, would you mind just entering something in the chat, and we'll see if everybody can see it. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Anna. Excellent. So please feel free to, oh, Nancy Hobbs is on there too. Hello, Nancy. Yeah, please feel free to use the chat here. It's a great way just to say hi to everybody and put your hands up and just say you're there. So yeah, we're looking forward to this webinar. Thank you, Kimberly. Good to see you out there. Yeah, we'll use the chat. We will use the Q&A section as well. So feel free to pop any questions in the Q&A as we go through, and we'll be looking forward to your questions as we work our way through. So we have three panelists with us, but before we get going and introduce our panelists, I just want to introduce our whoops, if I press the right button. We just want to introduce our presenting sponsor, who are Marathon Printing. And for those of you that don't know, then Marathon Printing is a family-owned company that specializes in producing custom printed bibs for endurance sports. Race bibs are their most popular item that they're really well known for, either custom printed or stock bibs. And Marathon Printing also supplies vital accessories for race directors like pins, bags, pennant flags, as well as postcards, business cards, brochures, bumper stickers, and labels. And they've been a loyal supporter of the conference since 2015 and are also an event standard partner for ATRA. And we're very grateful to Ryan Zirk and the team at Marathon Printing for their support of this webinar series. And they actually, basically their support for the series here means that we don't have to charge anybody to access these webinars. So very grateful to Marathon Printing for enabling that to happen. Hello, Venkat from India. Welcome, good to see you there. Luis, you're cheating, you're there already. Okay. And Wendy, Wendy from snowy Central Oregon. Okay, I hear back in the west of America that you guys are getting some snow. So I hope everybody's doing okay out there. And so we'll get going. We'll go to PowerPoint presentation, which which I will get going in just a second. Okay. Whoops. Okay. All right. Cool. So, sorry, I had it minimized and forgot it was minimized. So I will share the screen and then everybody can see the presentation. Okay. Hopefully all you guys can see that as well. So yeah, got a thumbs up on that? Yeah, okay, excellent. So Presentation, as I said, the session is, excuse me, the series is sponsored by Marathon Printing. And today we're going to be covering race courses, logistics, parking, aid station, and spectators. So thank you everybody for participating on this webinar. Without further ado, if we can go through, if you can do a quick introduction for yourselves, and Michele, if we start with you, and then Luis, and then Anna, if you can just do a short introduction and let everybody know who you are and why you're here.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Terry. I'm Michele Hartwig, and I live in the Midwest. I'm based out of Crystal Lake, Illinois, which is a northwest suburb of Chicago. And I put on trail races in Wisconsin and in Illinois. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you for Marathon Sports. I've been using their bibs for many years, and they do a great job. And thank you for American Trail Running Association for making great stuff for us to learn as RDs. I've learned a lot over the years coming to your different webinars and events.
Excellent. Thank you, Michele. And so Luis, if you could do the same and introduce yourself.
Hi, Terry. My name is Luis Escobar, and I am based on the west coast of California. Right now, I'm sitting in Santa Maria, California, which is the heart of the California Central Coast. So I am I'm a photographer, and I am also an event coordinator. I've been putting on and running events. I've been running and racing myself since the 80s, and coordinating running events almost that long. We own about, depends on the year, but anywhere between 5 and 8 trail runs here on the Central Coast, actually up and down the California coast. In addition to that, I host a small podcast. It's called the Road Dog Podcast. You can check it out at roaddogpodcast.com. And then I also work part-time for Spartan Trail. So the Spartan Race, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's an obstacle course company, but they also have trail running. So since 2019, we've been hosting trail running events all across the country, and I've learned a lot working with those guys. And just to echo what Michele said, Marathon Printing, perfect. I consider them to be a business partner. We've been working with them for many years, and all of our bib numbers come directly from those folks there at Marathon Printing.
Excellent. Thank you, Luis. And last but not least is Anna. If you could do the same, please, as well.
Okay. Hello, my name is Anna Hosford. I am based out of Southern Utah. I live just near Zion National Park, and I am an event director for vacation races. I've been with the company since 2016, but originally I was kind of in the marketing team, design and marketing side of things, and my job has slowly shifted into event directing. It's not quite the path you might expect, but it's been really fun. And I'm excited to be a part of this panel today and to learn from other event directors and to help give my 2 cents as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anna. So Luis, I don't know if you saw, but Nancy Hobbs says down here that you've got a great pod and loved your recent interviews with Adam Chase and one with George Rimmett. And she says, love Road Dog.
Thank you.
Yay, round of applause for Road Dog. And yeah, of course, Dirt Trail Running Podcast. Michele, you have a podcast as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the podcast.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah, we talk about coaching and like local races and stuff like that. So yeah, tune in. We get the coaching ones right now have been really good with Coach Loretta and Coach Reese have been doing those.
Cool. Oh, Nancy says, and Michele's pod is also terrific. Okay, all right. So what I did was I decided to ask each of these race directors to. They had 4 categories, and I asked them to give me their top 3 tips for each of the 4 categories that we're going to be covering during this webinar. So here's a great picture of Michele. Michele, where was this? Where was this race?
This is, well, I'm actually the race director of this race now, but that's at Kettle Moraine 100.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's my daughter next to me, and now she is 23 years old.
Wow. Okay. That was a couple of years ago then.
Yeah, and I'm visiting her now in Arizona at her apartment, and she runs races with me. So
Cool. Nice. Anna, where was this picture taken?
This was in Canada. This was our beta trip of our Global Adventures. That's a series of events that we do, and I helped out put this on. So we were up in Jasper at this lake.
Nice, cool. And here's Lewis. There. Where's this? Do you remember this picture, Lewis?
I do. That's in a place called Thimphu in the Kingdom of Bhutan. So deep in the Himalaya. And we were out there scouting a course. This picture was taken, I think, in 2019. We were looking at a route up there. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Okay, lovely. Thank you for your pictures there. And Shelley, good to see you. Good to see you out there. Thank you so much for your note on the chat there. So Michele, you're first up on this. So three key factors for logistics. And yeah, take it away, Michele.
Okay. Yeah. So first off, I thought was just providing clear information for runners. I mean, we're all runners. So, like we know what we learned from and, how we soak stuff in. So just kind of take that in mind. I get a lot of the information out by pre-race emails and then on social media, because some people just won't read emails and some people read social media. And then of course, a clear website. But for like the pre-race emails, I'm not going to send an email that has like everything that I want them to know. I like to spoon feed it over, a month or maybe even longer going into the race. So just like choosing what's very important that I want them to know, and then just one bit of information at a time. And then also sharing that across social media. And then let's see, I have notes here. Some of the most important things, like right before race, that I really like to relieve stress of the runners, because you're like going, okay, how do I get to the start line? Where's packet pickup in that time? Is I like to send out an email that just has a link that will drive them right to that area. And then, like title that to, save as for race day, so they don't have to be rushing around thinking about that, because we want to make it as stress free as possible. And then another part of communication would be setting up clear expectations for the runners, like drop bags, when do those need to be dropped off, and and that would be another thing that I might hand feed to them. And then also, super clear signage. I mean, there's at conference, there was a father and son or father and daughter that came that made some really nice signs. Get stuff clear. I found that signage, if you handwrite it, a lot of times people won't read that unless it's very, very neat. But make your signs ahead of time, so that they can be nice and clear. And that company is really great. They make some really nice signs. And plus you want it to work with the landscape that you are. Like certain colors don't work in a very green landscape or in the desert. I just ran a desert race. They had like pink polka dotted ones, and they showed up really well. Yeah, racearrows.com. Thank you, Kimberly. And so let's see. Then another key factor is working with the community, because you don't want the community to be surprised that all of a sudden you've got all these runners taking over and on the trails that they're normally on. So you can like reach out to different local running clubs. Like one of the races I put on, there's they have like 4x4 clubs, and so the park actually reaches out to them, because usually whoever you're getting your permit from already has relationships, and they can tell you who all these different groups are. And then that way the 4x4s, there's lots of trails out there. I've been lucky they've closed down those trails, but they might accidentally end up out there. So if you tell all the clubs ahead of time, that definitely really helps. And then the third thing I had on there is a race day contact plan, because you want everything to be easy on race day. You don't want anybody to be struggling to look for information. So well before the race, have all the important phone numbers that you need, in a, like a Google Doc or on an email, and then, like check with people, make sure that they get it into their phone, or if you're going to be using InReach, just however you're going to be communicating, have that organized ahead of time and sent out to everybody. And that spoon feeding information is another way that I work on that, like with volunteers. Volunteers, this is, they're wanting to have fun, they want to help, they want to do a good job, but they don't want a job where it's like homework trying to get everything. So you want to give it to them as simple as possible, far in advance, when their mind's not racing. And then also remember to make that list for yourself too. What will you be looking for on race day? And get that organized well before race week, so that your mind's not racing at race week, and you can go in there nice and relaxed and not stressed out. But
wonderful.
That's all that I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Michele. Yeah, nice and relaxed race weekend. That sounds like a good key. Okay, so next up we have Anna. So Anna, if you can take it on from here.
Okay. So in logistics pertaining to race courses, so for the Vacation Races series, all of our events are near national parks. So it's important to us to have picturesque locations. And I know for anybody that might not know, our races aren't in the national parks. They're always near a gateway city next to the national parks. But all the places that we choose as far as location and where the course is actually going to go is going to feel like you're in a park where it's going to be very beautiful. So when it comes to logistics and planning things out and finding that right course, and sometimes you've got to make changes from year to year with a course for any given reason, whether there's construction happening or a landslide happen and it's taken out a part of your course. When you have to redo a course or find another route, or just when you're scouting and looking for new things, one of our core things is to make sure it's in a picturesque location, because we're trying to give our runners the best experience. I know sometimes you have to modify things, or you can't have 100% of your course be just absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. You have to have what's called junk miles, so to speak. But in general, having that lasting memory for our runners of what they're viewing, what they're experiencing, the place they get to go to is really important for us. So a picturesque location is something that we need to remind ourselves of in what we can offer the runners, because they're coming from all over the world to see these beautiful places. Another thing when it comes to logistics, which is can be tricky, is emergency access or the ability to extract people, especially for, say, an ultra race. You've got a lot of miles to cover, and sometimes they're in a deep backwoods area or up on a mesa that you couldn't really drive to. So our best thing to do is just place your aid stations in strategic locations. So you can think, okay, they're going to be descending down from this mesa down to the ravine. Where's the best place I can get my vehicle closest if there's an accident or injury in order to extract somebody? Or another thing with emergency access is maybe making strategic cutoff times or points of the area on course so you can extract people as easy as possible. You can anticipate that. If there's going to be a more technical area before, maybe giving people a chance to extract prior to, so it's not as difficult. Because emergencies and accidents can and will happen. So just having a plan of action for that and the ability to extract people as best you can is really key on logistics of it. My third point has to do with traffic control. As event directors, you all are all aware of how tricky traffic control can be sometimes if you're in a more developed area, or even if you're not. You get met up with all sorts of challenges and pitfalls to get over, and traffic control can be tricky, but the more you can plan and the more you can communicate with the local law enforcement and your helpers who are helping you with the traffic and your overall traffic control plan that you're presenting, that's going to help save a lot of hassle. Nothing stresses out a runner more, and I know you've all been there. It's like you're getting to the event, maybe you're running late and you're behind a whole long line of cars and you just want to get there and park and be there. Once you're parked, you can relax. But until you get there, that's when a lot of people can be worried about an event. So planning through your traffic control issues and helping get people parked and run through things smoothly, that's key for something that we focus on at Vacation Races.
Cool. Wonderful, Anna. Thank you so much. So, Luis, you are next up. And yes, so still on the logistics. And I know you sneaked in for Luis, so yeah, but we'll give you leeway on that.
I actually wanted to ask a question of Michele. Is it routearrows.com or racearrows.com?
It is route arrows.
Okay.
Routearrows.com. Okay, great. So let's see. My thought and theme probably for this whole webinar is going to be safety. Safety for the participants, safety for staff, safety for everybody involved. And my second point here, participant and staff safety, but then venue requirements, it goes together. So for me, one of the most important components of organizing an event is the venue itself, because if we don't have a place to recreate, we don't have a race. So our relationship with the property owner or the management company or the government or whomever it is very, very important. And so safety plays into that, right? So if the course is designed in a way that puts people at unnecessary risk, or as Anna was saying, if there's no logistical way to get to people, anything that we can do to improve safety for everybody involved is key in my mind. We have to have the venue, and the venue is not going to invite us back if we're reckless or if we're doing things that are going to put them at risk. Think about these venues. Essentially, they have everything to lose and nothing to gain by inviting the public to come and recreate there, especially in large groups of people. So those are my two main points throughout this webinar and as I create events. Safety and thinking about that venue, their requirements, their rules. I want to be very, very aware of what they expect and make sure that I respect everything and get myself invited to come back again next year. Make it a pleasant experience for the participants, the staff, and the venue. I put in here accuracy, and that's just in terms of measuring the course. I think people pay us to come out and run an event, and they want it to be pretty close. A lot of trail runs are not always dead accurate, and I let people know that when they line up at a race, and I'll tell them, hey, I know that this is long. You don't have to tell me that it's long. I know that it's long or short or whatever it is, but I'm going to do my best to get as close to the number that we advertised as possible. So if it's a 50K, it should be 50 kilometers. And then I think what Anna was saying about a picturesque place, aesthetics, when in selecting a route, of course, really thinking about where we're putting people, and we want to make the most pleasant experiences possible and use that venue to its fullest and show that property off the best that we possibly can. So that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Luis. It's yeah, great content there for everybody for logistics, and yeah, I think you're right. It's very important, isn't it, to make sure that especially if it's a first-time event, then if you're using somebody else's land, then it's so super important to make sure that you get invited back again and to have a good relationship with them. So great points. Thank you. So Anna, we're moving along now to parking. And so take it on from here.
Okay. So Michelle touched on this point with pre-event communication. We do a similar thing where you kind of trickle information to people bits at a time leading up to the event so that they're reminded about logistical things such as parking and where to go at that point. Pre-event communication, again, as Michelle said, people receive information in different ways, whether it's via email, via social media, via a podcast that you're doing prior to the event, or just emails back and forth on one-on-one basis. So making yourself available is one thing, and communicating as much as you can and thinking through in the runner's standpoint. You as event directors, you could tell everything front and backwards about an event because you're in it all day long. but your participants and your customers are often coming from a place they've never been there before. It might be their first time to that area at all. So it's important to not forget about those little details because it's so common knowledge to us, it might be brand new to them. So letting them know with communication, maps are important. Anytime you can drop pins to people, oftentimes we're in areas where you don't have service, so you recommend to download things ahead of time offline so that they can get to locations. My second point comes with physical signage and enough manpower. So kind of referencing my previous point with pre-event communication, nothing can comprehend or nothing can compensate, excuse me, for all that previous communication. If they don't read it all, or even if they read it, once they come on location, it's a whole different story. It's often dark, it's early in the morning. Everything they kind of previewed ahead of time virtually on, say, Google Street Maps and Street View, they're like, well, this is not what it looked like because they're showing up at dark, in the night, in the early morning. And so the best thing to do is have manpower there to physically guide people from one place to another, and to have good signage, have reflective signage, not just good signs, but reflective signs is a big thing that we've been trying to put into our systems and for all of our locations. And yeah, having enough manpower. So I mentioned utilizing help that's already involved. We, for our half marathon races specifically, usually we'll get a team or a group or some sort of organization that's local. One, they know the area better, but we ask for their help to help us with parking in the morning, and then we let them loose as the bulk of the runners have started to park. We'll let them loose so that they can go out onto course to work their aid station locations. So it's a great way to utilize that manpower that might already be there when you need more staff in a short period of time rather than the whole day and having to use all of your staff. And lastly is to fill your most complex areas first. Depending on your venue and your location, you might have very tricky parking where you've got to have your own rope or string laid out and you're parking people front end to front end and making your own aisle. Other places they have striped and it's blacktop paved parking. That's obviously the easiest. So if you fill your difficult areas first, then as people trickle in or they're showing up late, it's more apparent where they can park because they can see, oh, there's a striped parking lot right there I can pull into. So you're trying to take the guesswork out of it for people and utilize your manpower to get everybody parked in those complex areas first so that it's simpler later on. And that's it.
Wonderful. Cool. Thank you so much, Anna. I was tempted to put another plug in there for route arrows, but I won't do it this time. Okay, so Louis, although they might be listening in, I'm not sure. Louis, so yeah, you're next up for parking.
Well, again, same thing. I want to know exactly what the venue expects from me, where they want vehicles to be and where they don't. And all of that needs to be very, very clear, your agreement with them. There can be no question about what you're supposed to do. Another thing that I like to do is document everything before I arrive, make photographs of the property, make photographs of the parking area, and then when I leave, photograph it again and share that with the venues, just to make sure that we're all on exactly the same page. What Anna just said, I think is very important when designing a parking area. You're thinking about getting cars in and out, and what she just said is key, and that's to fill the difficult areas of the venue first, and also think about the participants. If you have multiple distances, people are going to be arriving and leaving at different times, and so those cars ideally are parked in a way that the shorter distances are able to get into their cars and leave sooner. So find a path that makes the most logistical sense. Obviously, anything you can do to keep runners away from the cars and away from traffic, that should be on the top of your mind. You don't want any, if you can, we certainly don't want runners crossing a driveway path or through a parking lot. Again, it's all back to safety and cooperating with the venues. Consideration for all participants, just what I just said. We have different different distances. Think about when you're putting cars into the parking area, how the flow is going to be. Shorter distances leaving first, and so on throughout the day. I guess the main thing is always, again, runner safety, staff safety, participant safety, and cooperating with the venues. And so parking kind of falls into all of that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lewis. Michele, before we move on to you then, Nancy Hobbs has put a little comment here. I know that you probably pay for permits, but do any of you also offer an option for folks to make additional donations to the park or trail via the registration? I have done this before with much success. And so, yeah, I wonder if you have any comments on there. I mean, Anna, I was thinking about the work Vacation Races does with the park service, but
Sure.
Yeah, comments on that?
Yeah, as part of our registration, so we have partnered with an organization called Wander Project, and they're a nonprofit organization that helps put that money into good use back in the local areas where each race location is. So when you sign up, or when any participant signs up, you can either donate to Wander Project, and it can go to a big pool that they will go through, like a National Park Foundation associated with that park, or a nearby state park or other recreation area. But there's also specific runners you can donate to. So all of our races, we offer charity bibs too, where if runners raise a certain and set amount of money for that local area and for Wander Project, we waive the registration fee. So you can either donate to a Wander or to a charity bib runner, or you as a charity bib can fundraise that money, or you can simply make a donation and not be involved with the charity bib through Wander Project.
Great. Yeah, Michele or Lewis, anything else to add on that?
Yeah, for Kettle Moraine 100 and Midwest States 100, both of those races of mine are on the Ice Age Trail, and that's a 1,300-mile trail that runs through Wisconsin. It's pretty iconic to the state, and the Ice Age Trail Alliance takes care of that. So I have an option that you can donate like $1 to $20 to the Ice Age Trail Alliance, and we've been able to give them pretty good sized checks. The race, we match it and give it to them. And then for the Hennepin 100 race, we donate to the Hennepin Canal State Park Foundation. We have an add-on there at registration. And then we also, we don't monitor, it's an honor system. We ask that you volunteer in helping build trails or helping at other races as a requirement for 8 hours as a requirement for signing up for the race.
I can say that we don't have an option on registration for people to make a donation directly to any trail advocacy groups. But Nancy, that's a very good idea, and I'd like to learn more about how that can happen. We use UltraSignup as our registration platform. So if there's a way through there that somebody can make a donation, I'd like to learn more about it and make it happen. We do work with some of the trail groups locally, in particular, the Runners for Public Lands, which Nancy knows, and I think Terry, you know as well. It's a nonprofit based in Ventura, and they are advocates for open space and recreational trail systems. And we work pretty closely with them. They usually have a presence at all of our events. We'll be seeing them in a couple of weeks at the Born to Run Ultra Marathon. And so the answer is no, I do not have a method for people to make a donation during registration, but we do interact and we do raise money for groups. And I think you're going to see a change on our UltraSignup registration page.
Cool. Thank you. Great question, Nancy. Yeah. So UltraSignup provides a no charge when raising money for a 501c3. So I'm betting you can do an add-on. Yeah. So Kirk Cherep, thank you so much. I was going to say, for those of you that don't know, RPL, or Runners for Public Lands, that Lewis mentioned, that they've just established a really great toolkit for race directors. and it's definitely worth checking that out. And then, yeah, it sounds like there's definitely an opportunity to link into them as part of the registration flow as well. And that's a really great, I think, another really great mechanism to, in terms of encouraging folks to want you back again as well. So if you're not just putting on the event and doing a good job for that, but you're also as a part of the event you're putting on, you're actually raising more money for the organizations and businesses around the trails too. So okay, Michele, you're next up for parking.
Okay. Yeah, they did a great job talking about getting all the runners parked, and that is, that takes organization and then a plan. And for me, that kind of feels like the easiest part of parking, because you know what time everybody's coming. The part of parking that actually is that kind of, I think that is really hard to deal with is crew, because it's a lot easier to keep the runners exactly where you need to be. But crew, they want to get to their runner. They just are, maybe they haven't read over the instructions as well as all the runners have, which you can help them with by teaching the runners to, teach that on to their crew. But one of the things I do to kind of help that is, like course scouting beforehand, looking around for spots that if you were there crewing somebody that you might consider parking at. And then making a plan if like, for example, there might be a church, like there's a church that's by one of our courses, and we don't have, and I've asked that the church actually if they would mind if we park there, and they don't want us parking there. So I need to make sure I get that information out to the crew, have it on the website, and just find ways, because signage is hard to work. You might need somebody there, because I put up no parking signs and people will just drive over them. And so you really need people there for those spots, because you don't want, the worst thing you can do is make your neighbors of the course mad at you. You need to be respectful of the people that live there, respectful of the businesses, and find ways that crew will understand that they cannot be there. And then, I use scary words. Will flip over if you try to park on the side of the road, because they will be using your website, because they'll need to do that to figure out how to get to the different aid stations. And then I capitalize the words crew, warning, cars flip over here, very steep edges, and just and make it really simple for them. And I might even adjust the website, the week before the race, right before the race, looking at it as a crew member, because those are going to be the people that are using it the most on race day. And then, and then the other thing would be, I wrote know your limits, but I kind of feel like they covered it, is just really understanding how many parking spots you have, and being conservative in how many people you let in, thinking about how many crew members are going to be there, and then just don't make your race bigger than you're going to be able to park people. And then I wrote down permission to alternate areas as well. And so for that one, I just wanted to express, get that done early. Like sometimes I will need to use some school parking, and you want to organize, they appreciate if you organize that well in advance, and ask for permission. You don't want to be scrambling at the end. So I think that covers what I had.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michele. Okay, we'll move on to aid stations. So we're covering a lot of ground in a short time here. So this is just like a race, isn't it? Okay. So Luis, you're first up on this for aid stations. So
sure.
Over to you, my friend.
Yeah. Let me just follow up on what Michele just said too about your neighbors. I'm so concerned about the venue and my relationship with the property owners or the managers, and the neighbors. We want this thing to go as seamlessly as possible, no surprises, and respecting everybody around. And essentially, we're uninvited guests and a lot of times, and just want to make sure that we create an environment that's good for everybody involved and the people around us. When it comes to aid stations, sort of what Anna was saying, being able to get in and out, get people in and out. So accessibility is important when you're designing a course. Take a good look at where these aid stations are going to be and how are you going to get there, and how are you going to get there in a way that respects the property and doesn't put participants at risk. So if you have your staff driving around on a race course during a race, that can cause some problems. So try not to allow that to happen. So accessibility, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get in? How are you going to get out? Not just for the runners, but for your staff, and then spacing, obviously, distances between aid stations. There's different experience levels and different expectations that runners may have. Some runners are fine with 10 miles between an aid station. Other events, you may need to have an aid station every 2.5 or 3 miles. So know your audience, know the folks that are coming, understand what they expect. And what somebody was saying earlier, communication is one of the most important things when it comes to aid stations. What is going to be there? What is on the aid station table? When can I expect to see an aid station? And all of that needs to be communicated very clearly to the participants before the event. If the aid stations are spread out real far away and you don't have a lot of things on those aid station tables, it's fine, as long as they know what they're in for before they get there. So no surprises for the event coordinators, the volunteers, the staff, and no surprises for the participants. You should be able to get in front of all of that stuff. Amenities, again, just communicating in advance to the participants and the staff. What's there? What's at this aid station? Is there a toilet there? Is there running water there? What is on the aid station tables? What are the amenities? Make sure, and more importantly, what you're not able to provide, and just communicate all of that in advance to everybody involved. Back to the top, I think, again, the main thing is to make sure that you're doing this in a way that doesn't put anybody at risk unnecessarily. Don't design a course or design a course where you minimal amount of interaction between cars and people running. That's it.
Brilliant, Lewis. Thank you. Yep, such an important point to finish on there, isn't it? It's the worst possible situation. Okay, so Michele, you're up next for aid stations.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things that I listed was, scouting out the locations and figuring out if you're going to be able to put your canopies. Like, you need to imagine what race day is going to look like. How many canopies are you going to need? Is this going to be a nighttime station where somebody may need to be laying down in a cot? Like, what are you going to do for cooking and lighting and stuff for that station? So you just got to make sure that there's a footprint that's not going into the forest or any land that could cause any damage. So finding a location that has a big enough footprint for everything that you're going to need to do, and then also working with whoever you're getting your permit from to make sure that that's a safe, letting them know where you're thinking about so they can check to make sure that's a safe location. Because our Midwest States 100 race, they needed to do environmental studies on the places that we chose. So we needed to let them know well in advance to make sure that by us being there, it's not going to cause any damage to any plants or stuff in the area. And then you need to decide, once you have that chosen, is this going to be a crew access aid station, or is there just no safe way for crew to be parking there and not disrupting the area? And then figure out how to make signage and communication to make sure that crew understands that. And we actually had a situation, that that was kind of a struggle for us. So I'll pass it on to you because I don't want anybody else to have to deal with this, but we had one location we chose and it looked great every single time we were out there. We were out there at least 20 times beforehand, thinking this is the most beautiful aid station spot. There was like a little turnaround and it would be so fun for the volunteers to be there. Well, it rained all day on race day and it was like an absolute total mud out there. And you needed a four-wheel drive to pull all the aid stations. So that was a surprise for us on race day. And it took us longer to set up, the night before getting out there because of that. So I probably, I could have asked some local people and get some ideas if that tends to get muddy in that area. It was very high, so we were surprised that it got muddy there. So just asking around for information like that could be good. And then let's see. And then for volunteers, you want to, everything, you want it to be stress-free for them. That is, volunteers are such an important part of your race. You want them to have fun. This is a huge commitment for them to be out there. I put on a lot of 100 races, so it's very long commitments. And one of the things that we like to do for them is we give them a sheet ahead of time of everything that will be at their aid station. Like if they're going to get a flipper for pancakes, a pot, a pan, whatever, every single thing that will be in the truck that we will be dropping off for them, they get a list of, plus all the food. And then we list out what we had planned for the menu and offer to, pay them if they want to buy something else, because some people want to make their own recipes. So, making it so they know ahead of time what to be looking for in those boxes, because they'll get there and we'll drop off all those tins for them. And then it's like, okay, now what's in here? And it's good for them to know ahead of time, what to be expecting. And then for supplies, hopefully a lot of your races are coming back, every single year, because you get to learn something each year on, how to make it better. And we keep a Google Doc. Everybody laughs at me when I say a Google Doc because we've got like 40 million of them, but they're so important. And after the race, we just start writing down everything that we learned from the last race. And we'll ask the volunteers, like, was there anything in particular that everybody was wishing they had at this station? Were they wanting more vegan options? Were they wanting that? And, keep track of supplies that runners were looking for. And then we make a spreadsheet and keep it on there and just try to streamline it for us the next year. So it makes it easier for us to plan out what we'll be delivering to that aid station the next year.
Cool.
I think that's it.
Michele, thank you so much. Luis, before we move on, Gary Smith, and thank you for being out there, Gary. He says here, spacing should consider weather. A hot summer race might need stations more often than a fall or winter run. So that kind of ties in, I think, adds on to what you were saying about spacing. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, cool. So, Anna, aid stations for you.
Okay. Both Michele and Luis has given some great points with aid station. I've taken a few notes. Some things I've shared is finding a cohesive group that's more optimal over multiple parties. And what I mean by that is, if it's an ultra marathon, that can be trickier because that's so many people for X amount of aid stations. But the more you can find a group, whether it's a sports group or a church group or some other organization, that helps a lot in your pre-communication and cohesiveness in the event. It's more fun for everybody to be working all one aid stations because it's one big party, but sometimes too many people can almost be a hindrance because they're just getting in the way. But obviously you don't want to understaff your aid stations either. So making sure you have enough staffing in general, but a cohesive group we found is helpful when we're just trickling in information a little bit at a time so that they can then disseminate that down to everybody in the group. For example, for our half marathon events, we'll typically find one of the local sports teams or something to help with the aid stations. And so we'll talk to the coach or talk to one of the athletic directors, and they seek the group. And once we find a good group, obviously we try to keep them, because the more and more your aid station workers and volunteers can come back year over year, like it's been said, people learn from what's been done in the past. They know how to improve it, and they look forward to it year over year to make it better. And they look forward to helping out an event. It's definitely something intrinsic when you get that satisfaction with helping with a race. And so if you can get those people over and over to help out, they kind of take ownership and they look forward to it every year. So a cohesive group is pretty key in that. Prep work. So that's all the way from the minute the event ends that year till when it happens again the next year. As it's been said, getting feedback is really helpful so that you know how to improve for the next year. But when you're restocking your supplies, thinking through on some of those weather elements, you might need to be packing more salt tabs or more electrolyte mix, things like that, if it's going to be hotter, or you're going to double up on your coolers of ice supply, things like that. So prepping in time, looking at the forecast, looking on what's coming is going to be key in how you're planning your aid station. You might have to make some last minute decisions just days before the race, but that's okay, because it's going to help make your runner's experience that much better. So giving clear instructions to your aid station workers when you drop something off that might be extra, saying, hey, we anticipate it's going to be extra hot. The runners are going to be slower. It's going to be that much later in the day. Therefore, keep an eye on this, keep things well stocked so that you're not playing catch up. You're anticipating those crowds coming or those more dire conditions coming your way. Instructions kind of goes with communication. So in our aid stations, we have a binder that if communication, whether it's radio or cell or going there in person, if any of those ways of communicating fails, you always got that binder for people to revert to, which has 1, emergency contact information, 2, what's in your supply, and 3, what needs to be done. So as Michele said, some of your aid stations, you will be cooking more in depth, and some are more simple as far as grab and go food items. And so you've got to have information and instructions in there on what to do. And also it's helpful to have information on the race itself. Sometimes you might have a group of volunteers that they know what they're doing as far as the aid station, but they're maybe a little less versed in the ins and outs of the race itself, like where they are at in the point of the race. So having things like that in the binder is key. Having signage, things like that for the runners to know, you're at this point in the race, you're at this aid station, you have this much to go for this distance, this much to go for that distance, and so on. But the more that your aid station volunteers know that information, it's quicker. It helps the runners stay stress-free because they can just ask the question as they're resupplying their pack and refilling their water bladders, that they can just get the information they need and they can keep moving in the right direction. Sometimes aid stations can be strategically placed where you're forking in the trail. So, your 50K distance might be heading one way for a loop, whereas your 100 milers are continuing on. It's important that your aid station volunteers and workers know the course well enough, at least to direct them from that point of when they arrive and when they're heading from that point on. And then obviously cleanliness is a big deal, whether it is trash, whether it is spills, wiping things down, keeping your drop bags organized. Having a return to finish line drop bag thing is a great thing that we've implemented over the past few years to get people their bags much sooner. But again, communication and some signage is important so that people know where they're putting what, so that we can keep things clean and safe for the runners as they're coming through and leaving, so that they can be as efficient as possible.
Excellent. Thank you, Anna. Okay, we're running out of time, so if I could ask the three of you to move along as quickly as possible on the last one now, which is spectators. But Michele, you're first up, so fire away.
Okay, well, I think we've covered some of this, so that'll make it easier to go quickly. because I feel like we've talked a lot about crowd management and then, well, I guess the website for spectators. I think, you know, when you build your website, make sure that it's easy for crew to understand. I actually really appreciate crews. Sometimes they'll ask me, you know, a month in advance, you know, trying to figure out how they're going to get around on race day. So easy to find information for crew on the website. Like I think that GPS coordinates work really well, like Google Maps, you know, links for that, finding stuff like that. And then educating volunteers to help, you know, that's again with social media, with pre-race emails, one-on-one conversation with your volunteers to kind of talk through things to help them out so that, you know, in advance of race day, and help them, you know, help the spectators, because I guess that one of the things I would point out most about spectators is keeping them off of the course. And that would be where the volunteers would step in, and they would, you know, we use banners and fencing and stuff to keep them off, but sometimes they'll get around there and just kind of help the volunteers, you know, tell them how important it is for the runners to be able to get in and out of the aid stations without everybody crowding around. So I quickened that up there.
Cool. Hey, Michele, sorry, you caught me off guard there. Thank you so much. Anna, you're next up here on spectators.
Okay. As you all know, spectators, they might not be, or most likely won't be, getting those pre-event emails. So it's important. This probably applies for spectators and crew, kind of one and the same, but pre-event communication, we try to really put the pressure and emphasis with the responsibility on the runner getting that information, saying, you know, this is important, please let your crew know. Or multiple times where you're like, I understand that I need, you know, if my crew disobeys one of the race rules, it's going to disqualify me. So they have that responsibility on them to give all that information to their crew as far as where you can go, where you can't go, what some of those rules are for a particular race. So pre-event communication, by letting them know, because they likely aren't getting that information well up. If they're good, savvy crew, they're looking at their website and getting informed their own, but oftentimes crew might be put together last minute, or spectators, they're coming last minute and they're there to see their runner, but they don't realize the logistics involved. And so, you know, that's that crowd mentality you want to try to eliminate by giving them information. And so you can combat that by that on location information with proper signage, where to go. If you have ability to be on a PA system in those more crowded areas, that's a great way to inform everybody as a whole. Last thing I wanted to mention is RaceJoy tracking. So we use a software, or it's an app called RaceJoy. It helps better for our half marathons, but it's worked in our ultra marathons as well, depending on cell reception. So it can be tricky with those longer races, because the app uses, your phone is essentially the beacon. So the runner uses the app as the person that wants to be tracked, and then the family or spectators are tracking that runner. So we recommend for anybody a 50K or longer, 50 mile or longer, excuse me, you know, maybe RaceJoy isn't the best option for them because it can dwindle your battery life. But luckily, all of our courses, there are at least points in the race where there is cell reception. So we recommend, if they can, if they've got people worried, send them a text. Just if they're not staying on their estimated time and point where they should be in a race, that's one way to communicate. But otherwise, using RaceJoy tracking is a great way for them to physically track their one runner, instead of coming up to us and saying, do you know where my runner is? When have you last seen them? So that they can just kind of be hands off and less stressed on keeping tabs on where they are, which can help them not overcrowd an area until they need to be there, until their runner arrives to that point.
Cool, great point, Anna. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, because it's great if we can use technology to take more take more role away from the race directors. So Luis, fine, you're the final one on spectators. So yeah, move on through.
Yeah, Terry, I know we're short on time, so I'll just kind of wrap up. Essentially, what I have here is just repeating what I've already said and what Anna and Michele have added to the spectator conversation. I would just kind of close by saying the main thing that we need to do as event coordinators is to manage expectations, make sure that everybody understands what they're walking into. If you are selling registrations to a highly produced event, then it should look and feel like a highly produced event. And if that's not what you're going to be providing, it just needs to be communicated. I think that the participants, the runners, they're cool with whatever you give them, as long as they know in advance before they sign up what they're getting, what they're not getting. So for me, in closing, I just go back to the beginning. Safety is my number one concern, safety for everybody involved, because that directly relates to my relationship with the venue, with the property managers, and managing expectations. Everybody, vendors, property owner, participants, spectators, everybody needs to be pretty much on the same page throughout the whole process. That's really all I got, Terry. I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. It was Anna, you're amazing. Thank you for all of those great comments and suggestions. Michele, thank you so much. And Nancy Hobbs, thanks for jumping in with the questions and the comments. That's it. All we do is run.com. Check it out. Come and run with me.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, well, we haven't got any questions in the Q&A, and the questions that we had going through on the chat we've dealt with. So yeah, before we give a vote of thanks for our panelists, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there for participating. So appreciate your support. The next webinar is April 25th and is on putting on zero carbon races. And just a reminder that the US Trail Running Conference is October 18th to the 20th, 2023, as in Mukilteo in Washington. And we've got early bird pricing until April 1st. So please register early to make sure you get the best pricing on that. And exciting news, we're going to be announcing in the next couple of days the theme for the conference this year. I just want to say 2 words: business and sustainability. And that's going to be our two focuses for this year, with a few words joining them together. So look out for that announcement coming through as well. Round of applause for Michele, for Luis, and for Anna. Thank you so much, you three, and really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdoms and expertise with everybody. And Venkatraman, hope I got your name right. Good night from India. And it's good evening from England, and good morning from America. And thank you so much, everybody. Take care out there. Be safe and love one another well.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.